Hi everyone and welcome back to the Crafty Yellow Camper, and today I've got a card for you using the Scenic Garden stamp set, which is one of the items that is available through Saleabration during the month of January and February. This is a Saleabration host set, so you need to have a order of £275 or more in order to get this stamp set. It sounds like a lot of money. It is a lot of money, especially in today's climate. But if you have friends that like to stamp, or if you're part of a crafting community that likes to stamp, and there are things that each of you want from the spring and summer brochure, then obviously that's the ideal time to club together, and you might be able to get this to share. Okay, so this is a really simple card, so I'm just going to put this stamp set to one side for the moment. Now I've got a C6 card base which we're going to have as a tent fold, so this is half of a UK A4 sheet. So if you're in America or South Pacific, that would be half of one of your letter sheets. Then I've just folded it in half. As I said, we're going to have a tent fold, and that is going to be our base, and that is in soft succulent. Okay, then what I've done, I've gone ahead and I have used the deckled rectangle dies, and I have cut myself 3 sizes of die, and I can just see I've got a little bit of something on there. I think it's just the shading on the card. Yeah, it's just a fault in the card, actually. It's not great. Anyway, so I've cut these 3 sizes from basic white, and they stack up like that. Now, in the deckled rectangle dies, there are, I'm just going to reach over so I can show you, they are a nesting set of dies, and there are dies that nest a lot closer than I've chosen to use. I just think they're really nice with that deckled edge. It just gives it a little bit of something rather than just being a rectangle of card. Now, I've already done this once, but I'm going to show you how I do it. So we're going to use this gate with flowers for this. And you need a fairly large image for this technique, and that is quite a large one. I'll show you, I've done it with one of the other images as well, and I will show you that in a minute. But first of all, let's just mount this up onto a block. Just fits on the, oh no, it would really help if I put it the right way round, wouldn't it? The label goes onto the block. Okay, so I'm just going to mount that up on there, and then I'm going to ink that up in smoky slate. You can use basic grey for this technique. You can use black if you prefer. I just prefer the lighter grey because that gives us almost a no line colouring. Now you can see I'm giving that a good ink up. I think I need to re-ink my smoky slate ink pad. Anyway, it will do for this purposes of this demonstration. So what you need to do, some people find it easier to use a little bit of repositionable tape to stick these down to get them level. I'm just going to wing it. Okay, so I've laid them down there. I've got them sort of central, going down in size. And then what I'm going to do, I've inked my stamp up. Just huffing over it because I've been talking to you. And then I'm going to lay my stamp over the top of that. And we are actually going to go to the middle, and I'll show you one that I've done that fills it a bit more. You just need, bear in mind, you've got 3 layers of cardstock here, so you do need to give it a minute for the ink to soak into the cardstock and give it a good press, particularly on the edges where it's going to go over, as you can see, onto the other pieces of cardstock. So then what we do is we are going to colour this in. Now, I'm not going to colour the whole of this image in. I'm just going to bring my camera down a little bit if I can, so you can see. I'm not going to colour the whole of this image in because it will take me too long, and you don't need to watch me colour. You all know how to colour. But for this, I'm using the Stampin' Up! Watercolour pencils. you could use whatever medium you choose. You could use blends, you could use whatever other alcohol pens you've got. I like watercolour pencils because they give more of a muted colour. The blends, in my opinion, have their place, and I do use them, and I use them a lot. But for this kind of image, I want that sort of cottagey garden watercolour image. And the other thing you can see is that I am not being very careful about where I'm laying down the colour, except for to keep it within the lines. So this one was Flirty Flamingo. This one is Old Olive. So our watercolour pencils come in 2 sets. There's set 1 and there's set 2, basically. I keep hoping that they will bring out some new colours, but I guess that depends on the popularity. We get lots of new colours in the blends because I think a lot of people find those really easy to use, and they are really easy to use. And as I said before, they have their place and I do use them a lot, but I wanted this more sort of mellow, mellow look. And the other thing that's great about these watercolour pencils is that you don't have to be a fabulous colourist. I am certainly not. So I'm just laying down some colour. Now, you might have recalled I've told you that I've got this stamped onto some basic white. Now, basic white itself doesn't take a ton of water without warping and starting to, the sort of top layer of the card starts to come away. Okay, now if you wanted to use an aqua painter to move your colour around on this, then I would strongly suggest to use either shimmery white or our watercolour paper. But what I'm going to bring in is a blender pen. So this basically will not, this is for watercolour inks. So you can use this and your ink pads to pick up colour, to colour in with, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But for watercolour pencils on basic white, this is great because you can see it moves the colour around for me, distributes it more evenly, so you don't get that harsh sort of coloured effect, but it doesn't make the cardstock that I'm colouring on wet. So a really good option. So it just helps you. I'm using an old one here. I could really do with a new one. You just, well, I have got some new ones, but I'm a bit tight. I like to use my old ones up fully. So you just literally, in between colours, you can swap ends, or you can scribble off. Just try not to press too hard because that is what blunts the sort of felt tippy ends. And you can see I'm not being overly careful. I'm trying to be a little bit careful, but I'm just going over and spreading out that ink, and where I can see I've missed bits, I'm just going to add a little bit back in there. So that was our end for the pink. When you get these come, the blender pens come with a really nice white nib, which doesn't last 5 minutes if you colour like I do. Okay, so I'm just spreading that colour out. Okay, and there's our watercoloured image. The other way that you can use a blender pen, as I said, is to use your ink pads. Let's get the right colour. Some Flirty Flamingo. This is an old style ink pad. It's chunkier than the new ones, but if you turn your ink pad over and give it a press, and it does work on the new ones as well, you will end up with a little bit of colour there, and you can pick up your colour. So this is water-based ink, obviously, because it's Stampin' Up! Ink. You can pick up your colour with the blender pen and go and fill in like that. And then again, in between colours, just sort of scribble it off. Okay, so I'm not going to colour the whole of that because you really don't need to watch me doing that. You all get the gist. Okay, if anyone needs any colour and tips, obviously drop me a line. Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'm just going to close my grey ink pad up. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to show you the one that I coloured earlier. And for this one, I used the bench image and this sort of sprig of hollyhocks. So I'll just put my stamp to one side. So you can see I've gone ahead and I've coloured these 3 sections. So this is what they look like when they are apart. And this is what we're going to mount up on our card front. So with the first layer, I'm actually going to stick that down flat. So I'm just using a little bit of liquid glue. Remember, less is more when it comes to liquid glue. If I'm working on a 10th fold card, I always open up my card so it doesn't bounce around. And then I'm just going to stick this down. Oh, got a little bit of glue there after telling you less is more. If that happens, don't try and get that off straight away. Let it dry. And then with a glue rubber, which is one of these, they look disgusting after a little while, but it still does the job. Then I'll be able to pick that adhesive up. The only problem with Tombow, which is what this is multi-purpose liquid glue. If you let it dry, it does dry, but it becomes tacky because you can use it as a repositionable glue. Okay, so that's that first section there. What I'm going to do on the next section is use some dimensionals, and I'm just fishing on my desk to find some big ones because we don't need small ones for this. Small ones. Must have some big ones here. Yes, here we are. So our dimensionals come in 2 different sizes. They're the standard ones, and these are the little tiny ones, and you can also get them in black as well. So on the back of this second layer, I'm going to put some dimensionals. So I'm using the hexagons. You can use strips as well. Now, I'm not one for over egging the dimensionals, but you do need to make sure that this is fairly well supported at the back because it's going to have another layer on top of it. This isn't a card for putting in the post. Okay, so now what we're going to do is line up. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Without sticking it down, we're going to line up our image. There we go. So that's the second layer of our image, and I've just noticed, I'm just going to very gently, you can lift dimensionals. I'm just going to very gently add a little bit of colour to the edge there because I've just noticed that the edge of, I don't know if you can see, the edge of the curl of that bench is on my bottom sheet. So I just needed to add a little bit of colour to that. And then we're going to do the same thing again with the middle. So I've treated this as I did the sample that I showed you. I've stamped it in smoky slate, and I've watercoloured it using a blender pen. Okay, and so this is our top layer. So we've got 3 layers. You can do this with as many layers as you want to, really. Okay, so that's that. And then again, you need to line this up. Now, this is the one that's a little bit more tricky because I need to get the legs on the bench lined up and the top of the bench and the side of the bench lined up. Right, there we go. So I think that's level. Yeah, I think that's about as level as it's going to get. Okay, so there's our image. So it's a 3D image that sort of comes out from the card. And I just think those deckled rectangles just give it a little bit of something else. I can just see here where I've been colouring, I've caught the edge of the coloured pencil. I'm just going to rub that out. Okay, so that's that. And then for the inside of that card, we're going to use another piece of basic white, and I'm just going to stamp on that. I'm just going to get rid of these dimensionals off my desk. They have a habit of appearing everywhere around my house. Okay, so there are no greetings in this stamp set, but there is this really nice pot of flowers. So we're just going to stamp that as a line effect drawing. You could colour it in. I'm not going to colour it in. I'm just going to stamp that as a line effect, just because it's nice to have the inside of the card decorated as well. I'm left-handed, so I automatically do it on the right side. Okay, I'm just giving that a good press to make sure we've got that image. And there we go. So we're just going to have that line-based image there. And then we need a greeting. I'm not actually going to stamp a greeting, but here is where I would stamp my greeting. I tend to leave my cards until I've decided who I'm going to send them to, and then I add a greeting to it. So for that reason, I'm not going to stick this into the inside of my card. So it will eventually get stuck in there. And this is another, so that will be the inside with a greeting. This is another tip that I'd like to give you. If, like me, you make your cards and you don't add a greeting on straight away because you want to leave it until you decide who you're going to send it to, don't stick the inside in, because if you stamp a greeting on that, or if I stamp a greeting on that and mess it up, smudge it, and it's stuck in the card, that's the whole card gone. Whereas if I leave it, don't stick it in until I use the card, then that gives me the option to turn it over and have another go. So that's my top tip for that one. Okay, so that's my card. I hope you like it. And have a go at this technique. You can use it with any stamp. It just needs to be a stamp that's a reasonable size so that it goes over the layers. And I will finish, there we go, I will finish colouring this one in. So we haven't actually got much on the bottom of this one because this stamp fitted more evenly over the middle two. And I might even use this stamp here to stamp some sort of path going off the bottom there, but I'll decide on that later. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope you like the card, and I'll see you all again soon. Happy stamping. Bye for now.